And we're in. Welcome to Curiosity and Command podcast, supported by Kaizen Summit. In each episode, we sit down with thoughtful people to explore leadership, discipline, growth, and the ideas that shape how we live and work. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Mr. Mark Coulson.
How you doing, Ben? Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, buddy. So, can you just briefly give us a wave tops view of where you started and how we got up to this point here today?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess if I start just with the current situation briefly, owner and I guess you would say managing director of MSC Performance Gym, so a small independent gym based out of Birmingham. To get up to this point, kind of grew up in a world of sport and exercise and health. Just one of these like mad kids running around, just full of energy, couldn't sit down, couldn't concentrate, but just loved exercise, loved health, loved sport. So always knew I wanted to be involved, in health and fitness and exercise from a very young age. Grew up playing every sport under the sun. Maybe rugby and sort of cricket were my two main sports really, and went on to play sort of semi-pro rugby. And university, sports science, master's strength and conditioning. And that kind of obviously led into the world of work. Knew I wanted to be involved in sport and exercise, but didn't quite know what that looked like. So I did the kind of usual pathway, got a job in a gym instructor, doing that kind of work, cleaning treadmills and running the occasional spin class back in the day. And just gradually got into personal training and one-on-one work. Which was just hugely rewarding for me. I just loved that, just loved having that opportunity to work with different individuals and just super passionate about seeing the difference that you can make in someone's life, was just hugely rewarding for me. And I just knew from then I was hooked, and that's the route I wanted to go down. Worked in a kind of commercial gym setting for a while. And then a big part of my kind of career that I guess shaped me into more strength conditioning and performance-based training was I did a British weightlifting course. We're talking when I was 22, 23. I'm 39 now, so a long time ago. But I did a course and then got picked up by a company called KBT Education, who were at the time doing strength conditioning for GB Rugby League, doing a lot of military work as well. So a lot of their work was going onto military bases and delivering strength conditioning courses to PTIs. And I kind of got dragged along, to sort of help coach that. And I was way out of my depth at the time, but just learned a lot from those guys. And just really, I knew I always had the sporting background, and I was never really into the bodybuilding, style of training. And then just seeing this kind of way of training and strength conditioning and powerlifting, weightlifting, S&C field sport, stuff like that, just kind of linked that my love and passion for sport and the gym. And it was okay, these two are way more connected than I realized. Because even playing a good level of rugby, in my late teens and stuff, I was still of an era just about where the gym wasn't really a massive thing in rugby until a bit later. So it took a little while to kind of get that link. And then, I was working for those guys for ages and still doing a little bit of one-on-one in a commercial environment. And it was an amazing job. Absolutely loved it. It just wasn't hugely sustainable because we'd be up in Scotland for a couple of days and down in Portsmouth and, all in Cornwall and all the kind of Navy bases and stuff. And, and I actually did my master's quite late. I was about 25, actually. I left uni at 21, was working, and then at 25 went back and did my master's because I had a back injury from rugby. It was pretty serious, and so I couldn't play for it ended up being a couple of years, but I used the opportunity to go back into study and research. So I was doing my master's in S&C, doing all this work, in the military and all this S&C stuff, and that was just the absolute that just lit the fire for me in terms of right, this is what I want to do, performance-based training. I know there's a place for this. And then from there, it was a kind of case of, do I go down the sort of, club route and working for professional clubs, or, do I set up independently? And at the time, so we set up in 2015, at the time, around 2012, 2013, there was just starting to, the rise of CrossFit and the rise of independent gyms. They were starting to pop up in the country, and I was like visiting these places and speaking to these guys, and like, wait, this is your gym? Like, it wasn't it wasn't a big commercial gym, it wasn't a pure gym at Valentine's. It was like, this is this guy's gym who's got this passion for S&C, and he's got his own clients, and it was like, wow, this is an option. This is like, just blew my mind. And from there, I was like, right, that's a route I want to go down. And here we are.
I've always wondered what your route to that was, and it sounds like it was very much like a passion-driven thing. There wasn't like one defining moment in the commercial world that was like, oh, I'm turned against this, and so I need to now go my own way. Can you take us back to that, and what made you go, actually, now's the right time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, again, I think I was getting a lot of inspiration from going to those independent gyms and just seeing like the freedom these guys had, it looked like freedom on the surface. And then when I set up the gym, I realized the first couple of years, there wasn't a great deal of freedom, but, the kind of, flexibility in the way. I had a certain way, and I was just really bought into, performance-based training is just for everyone. Like, everyone should be looking to come strong, better conditioned, more mobile, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess I wasn't seeing that in commercial gyms. People with headphones on, just kind of jumping on the first bit of kit they saw, treadmill, cross trainer, atmosphere a bit moody, people not really getting help, and like, it just really fired me up of like, okay, I can actually set somewhere. I could work for a club. I could go down that route, and credit to anyone who's done it, because, it's an amazing thing to do. And like, if I'd gone down that route, I'm sure I would have loved it. But for me personally, it just kind of, it was outweighed by the ability to be like, okay, I can set up this environment where people can enjoy their training, like train for performance, train for results, and get the help and the coaching that is required for them to actually maximize their time in the gym and actually, make that life-changing progress. Not going to the gym thinking like, oh, I've got to go to the gym, I'm just going to jump on this bit of kit, there's no direction, not really going anywhere. And so I think like that was probably the trigger really for me to sort of set that up. And I didn't have any kind of business background really. I was just a very passionate coach who was probably a bit naive, but just was all in on trying to create that environment for people.
Can you talk us through your early years in starting out in the business?
Sorry, Ben, and the years starting out in the business.
Yeah. How did you find your first 6 months, 12 months, especially as you just mentioned there, not having that business? And I was around at the time. I remember it very fondly, but from your perspective, being the sole responsibility, how was that for you?
Mate, I look pretty old now, but I think back then, 11 years ago nearly, I probably looked even older. I mean, it was, it was crazy. It was crazy. But you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, it's easy to look back with nostalgia now, but it was like, I will be just completely honest, it was like the best time and the worst time all mixed into one. It was like, you're getting people coming through the door, you're doing exactly what the product was about, right? Creating that good atmosphere. You could see people were loving the training. You could see we had a real product there. We had a real environment, just attracting great people. We had a great coaching team. It was a small team, but everyone was bought in, everyone was passionate. But then you also had the fact that you had no idea how to manage your cash flow. You had no idea what VAT was, and all of a sudden you've got to pay 20% on everything you earn, the bills, the management, and just trying to wear, I think like the most overwhelming thing when you first set up is just, realizing you've got to wear so many of the different hats of the business. You're the marketing guy, you're the sales guy, you're the coach, you're the cleaner, you're the accountant, and you're not experienced enough to manage that workload and manage your diary in the best possible way. So it's just literally like chaos from all angles, all at once. And you can't afford, we're open 6 a.m. till 9 p.m., right? Monday to Friday, we're open Saturdays, we're open Sundays. And we're not just a 24-hour gym where you just, our product was run on like people being there and helping and coaching and all that sort of stuff. So you need someone on site. but you can only afford a certain amount of coaches. I think it was Luke and Jackie at the start, and like probably doing like 3 shifts each a week. There's a lot of hours still to cover. So yeah, mate, it was like, again, on the positive side, like some of the best laughs, some of the best times, the excitement of it all, was just incredible. And then also at the same time, it was incredibly difficult because, again, you just like, you go in, or I went in at least thinking, okay, I back myself as a good coach at the time. Like, I was very passionate. I was, decent amount of experience for my age. I was, a bit of a geek for reading up, and just proper into it. And sort of thinking, well, I'm a great coach. Here we go, set my own place, and off we go. And then you quickly realise that there's actually a business to run, and it's just hugely overwhelming at the start. It was brutal, mate. I won't lie. And that's not trying to put anyone off from setting something up and starting something, because if you're passionate enough about it, it will work out if you don't quit. But for sure, mate, I won't lie to anyone. Like, it was tough. So it was both the best thing in the world and probably the worst at the same time. Just this whole mix of emotions, and with that, just massive highs, massive lows, just everything coming at you all at once. So yeah, it was a crazy period. That first 6 months a year. I mean, it was 15-hour. I'd be on at 6 a.m. and closing at 9 p.m. Back in at 6. Yeah, so crazy, but it builds up some tolerance, that's for sure.
So obviously the benefit of hindsight is it's 2020. What would you say to yourself if you could go back to 11 years ago? What advice would you give that younger self?
Yeah, I always wonder about that sort of thing, and not to like swerve the answer, but I think like it's just important you go through that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure, I'll come up with a better answer in a minute. Like, there will be certainly things that I would say to make it a bit easier for myself. But, I think in life you've got to, you've almost got to go through those things, right? It's like when when an older person says to you, "Oh, well, make sure you do this because, enjoy this moment, or call your parents more, or do that more, enjoy this more," and you're like, yeah. And like, as humans, we have to learn things the hard way, right? And I think like the fact that it was, 2 or 3 like good young keen coaches with no idea of how to run a business, kind of just worked for us in long term. I think people bought into like, there's a certain like charm about the business, about MSC, wasn't there, where it was like, these guys are bloody trying, these guys are, they're a bit raw, but like they're passionate. And I know if I go there and train, I'm going to get a good workout and good results. So like, I'd almost be tempted not to say anything, because I think you just have to learn the hard way. And I think like progressing anything in life and in business especially is just, being brave enough to make the mistakes and just imperfect action and just doing the thing, getting it wrong, learning from it, doing it again, making it a little bit better, and just going and going and going. And that's how you learn, right? That's how you learn, is from, making the mistakes and, and all that kind of stuff. So, that being said, I probably could have made it a bit easier for myself. I think like I was probably, one thing I would say to myself is, I don't know if this was a bad thing, but I think I was so focused on making sure everyone was like getting what they needed, having a good time. And I wasn't putting myself or the business first, if that makes sense. Like, probably a bit too afraid to have like difficult conversations at times. I was probably sounds bad, but like I was probably a bit too nice. I was a bit too, soft. I think like, just being a bit more like confident back in yourself that, you're the boss, you got hard decisions to make. And also like just looking after myself a little bit. I think that first year or two of MSC was probably like the worst I've been in terms of my like health and fitness and stuff. Because because of all those different hats you have to wear, and yourself, there's always something that you could be doing, right? I could finish at 9 o'clock tonight, and I could stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning doing more work, and that's 11 years in, because there's always stuff to do. But what it took me a long time, and probably longer than it should have, to realise is like, I have to make sure I'm looking after myself. I'm not talking about like even financially or anything like that. I'm talking about like getting my sleep, getting like my nutrition right, having that hour in a day where it's like, sorry guys, I'm training. Like I'm going to train, I'm going to look after myself. And I think I could have done a better job with that of managing myself, managing my own health and well-being mentally and physically. So that's probably one thing I would look at changing, because I think like if you're in charge of the operation, the staff, the members, they actually need the best version of you. So you think you're being selfless and you think you're like putting those guys first, but if I'm not like putting myself at that level or even putting myself first, then I'm going into work. I'm going into those 6 a.m. sessions tired. I'm going and I'm motivated because I haven't paid myself again this month. All those kind of, and you can start to resent things, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, sorry, that's a very long-winded answer. But I think like I'd almost be tempted to say nothing, because I think you have to learn the hard way, and I think that's good for you. But I'd probably just say to myself, look, it's okay to take that hour out of the working day and have a session. It's okay to go for that walk and get, see a bit of sunlight, and do a lap, because you think you're being this hero. But if you're not looking after yourself, your family's not getting the best version. As a dad, right? Your kids are getting the best version of you if you're training, if you're dedicating that hour a day to your training session. So that's probably something I'd say.
It's a really interesting point, and I think a lot of founders fall short of that because it's very enticing to make yourself into a martyr. Like, I have grazed, I have not slept since 24, and hang on a minute, you haven't slept for 17 years, mate. What's going on? Like, you got to look after yourself to be able to lead the team, lead your business, and like you say, be the best version of you.
It's funny in a way. It's almost a bit, in a kind of twisted kind of way, it's almost a bit selfish actually to be like that, because I do think there's part of you that's doing it to be the hero. I want everyone to think I'm working really hard, and it's taken a long, long time to realise that nobody actually cares about it. They just want to they just want the results to be the results, So I think there was probably a little bit of like, oh, look at me, I'm the hero, like doing all of this, and you're just killing yourself for there's no good for anyone,
So were you aware of that at the time, and then what was your kind of tactic to make sure that you would start doing the fundamentals, basically?
Yeah, I think I was aware of it. It took me so much longer than it should have to learn. It took me so much longer. And like, I'd even say like 10 and a half years in now, I find myself slipping back into that. Like I'll even be working from home and I'm looking for a bit of busy work. And it's like, nobody's watching, nobody cares. Nobody cares, and especially in my role now, people just care about the bottom line, really. Am I building careers? Are the staff increasing their pay? Are the members getting the experience they want? Nobody cares if I'm working 4 hours a day, if I'm getting the results. So I'm trying to really learn, and it's still a process of, it's about, really, rather than the process of just working 12 hours a day just because, in a twisted way, it makes me feel good that I'm doing that. It's you get that little endorphin release of like, oh, I've done that checklist today. I've worked through it. It's like half the checklist is nonsense. It took me way longer. I knew I was in it, but I was just addicted. I was addicted to it, I think. And it was necessary. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it is necessary when you start out. Like, it is necessary. You haven't got a cleaner. You haven't got the 6 coaches. You do have to be the technician alongside the manager, alongside the owner. You have to wear all those hats, but eventually you've got to, find a way to just replace yourself in those roles. So I don't know, like I probably realised 3 or 4 years in, mate, it took me a long time to realise I need some help here. It's not like I can't keep trying to be this hero of like doing everything myself. Even with staff, back then I'd be like, I'd be the worst. I thought I was this like really good leader and manager, but I wasn't, because I was just like, oh, I've got this, guys, don't worry, I'm going to do it. Like, which, obviously isn't the way to grow a business.
So, touching on that point then, can you talk us through your personal journey from founder, and then where are you at now in that like business journey? Were there like very defined steps of, like, say, 3 or 4 years in, you started to realise you were the bottleneck, you needed to start outsourcing, and that was like what would allow the business to get to the next level? Can you talk about that kind of journey that you've personally been on?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think like I think again, probably 3 or 4 years in, started to identify it. And funny enough, it was probably COVID that kind of helped us actually, because that was the first time. I mean, it didn't help us in many respects, don't get me wrong, but there was almost part of that was quite useful because it was just the first time that I stopped in five. So we were about the 5 year point, and it was like, and breathe. Like it was a chance to get, have a breather, sit back, assess what the hell's going on here. And that was a big moment, pivotal moment, I'd say, where it was like, okay, things have got to change. I've got to grow up and run this thing, and I'm going to need some help. So just started to basically look at ways in which we could, take people on. And at the time it was internships to begin with and all this kind of thing because we couldn't afford staff. So it was like, right, can you do this internship for us? And in return, we're going to, had some good contacts. We could put them on courses and we could spend time with them, teaching them, run, great reference. And it started off with stuff like that and just building up the amount of coaching. And then eventually we went into like getting a cleaner. And, in hindsight, I mean, if you read like, I'm sure you've read like Dan Martell's like, stuff, buy back your time, like really you should be starting with the lowest value task and building up. If I could have my time again, it'd be like, right, what's the lowest paid role I can replace myself with? And then you increase your levels of responsibility as you go up. I mean, I didn't exactly do it in that order, but yeah, that was probably about the time. And then, having I always trusted the staff. Like we've had great staff over the years, but having that full, I don't know, letting go of the ego, I guess, to be like, right, this person can do that job and they can do it as well as me. And you soon learn that a lot of the time they can do it a lot better than you. So that was a big process. I'd say now, like probably at a stage where it's a nice stage to be in. Like I don't have to be in the gym. I still am because I'm still a bit of a control freak and I still love it. I still love to be here. I feel like I just still need and want to have that connection with the team and with the members and everything like that. But I think like a big turning point for me was when I got to a stage where I didn't need to be on shift. And then you can, again, I'm, paraphrasing from from books I've read, but like, yeah, the sort of, the technician and just like, right, leaving that. And I still actually do a bit of coaching. I do about 6 to 8 hours a week, which probably isn't the smartest thing from a business sense because, I've got a good coaching team and I could pass those on and I could do more sales, more marketing. But I also just like to remember the reason I got into the business, which was coaching. So by having a small amount of that, I think it just keeps my eye and just keeps me sharp and keeps that relationship with some guys that I've trained, like coached for 15 years now, 20 years. And, it gets me on the dance floor, it gets me in there, like keeps me stuck in. But that was a big turning point when I didn't have to do shifts anymore. That was a good one. And then I can step up and like, right, okay, I can start to manage the guys now, start to delegate. And now we've got Luke in, who's, he's been here since the start, but is now like sort of, part-time GM/head coach. So the responsibilities of him are growing and I'm like sitting back a little bit more. And the bigger the operation, you need to have that bird's eye view of it and being able to assess what's going on. If you're in the business all the time, then, you can't always see where it's going.
You touched on it there. There should be no ego because it's not about you. It's about the betterment of the business, the people that are in it, the clients that you serve and all that. It's not, protecting you and your image and all of that. And it's really hard for people to do. But once you can control that, then it allows the business to thrive. And like you say, you kind of get out of the way and allow the team to build. It's a really cool moment, I think.
It's hard actually because in a way I miss that chaos of the first couple of years. Like I won't go back to it, but like, where, I've never seen myself as someone who got a big ego, but maybe I have. Like, in a way, I loved being the guy. It was like me, Lou, Jackie, like, teaching. Someone's teaching like 20 classes a week, and it's like they love coming down to do that class to see me, and I know I can give it. And what you're getting there is the user. It's coined the phrase technician, like. You're getting that instant reward. You're getting that like every day. You're getting that hit of like, end of the class, that feeling of accomplishment, that feeling of like, those guys have had a great workout. They love me. You feel loved. You feel like, it's nice. Now it's like, obviously I'm still trying to keep a connection to members, but there'll be a lot of members who don't probably even know who I am now. And like, I'm not getting that. I'm the guy who sends the email. Sorry guys, like we've got to nudge the prices up 2% this year. I'm probably that guy now, and you're not getting, obviously I'm still working a lot on marketing and sales, but I'm doing those social media posts. So I'm not getting instant gratification anymore. I'm tracking the numbers, I'm tracking the leads, the consultation rates, the show rate, close rate. I'm doing the reading and then I'm passing it on to the team. You're not getting as much direct, instant gratification and feedback that you were back in the day. So you're right, it's not easy to step back. And I think part of that there's nothing to do with the trust of my team. I've been very fortunate. I've had incredible coaches over the years. But I think it was more me of like, quite like teaching that Metcon class because I know the guys love me and it's good fun and I feel good doing it. Whereas like a Wednesday morning, I'm still up at 6, 7 o'clock, but I'm doing the emails, I'm dealing with the inquiries, I'm speaking to the accountant, all that kind of stuff. And you don't get that instant hit. So I love it. I wouldn't go back, but it's just different as the business grows.
I'm really fascinated with the journey that people go on through the business and what starts off as I'm passionate about whatever it may be, and then how that evolves into I'm so far away from that front end thing that I started, but actually I kind of love where I am now, and it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. You do have to let go. I think that's the thing. You have to, build yourself up to, that higher levels of responsibilities, and with that means, making sure the lights stay on, making sure you're keeping up with, inflation and rising costs, and things like that. And you've got a responsibility to your employees. To make sure they get paid every month and to make sure that their careers are growing in the right direction. And the better the staff are looked after, the better the quality of the product, the better the members, experiences. And that isn't anymore, unfortunately, about me teaching classes, and that's just a natural progression of things. You've got to get out of the way. That can be tough in a way. So. Yeah, because you get into it. Because I got into it. I wasn't I didn't do a business degree. I wasn't a business owner before. It was my first ever business, and I was just a really passionate coach. That's how I started. So that's why you get into it, and then a bit later down the line, your role's different. That being said, I actually love the business side of things now. And still keep that little bit of coaching in just to feed that side of me a little bit still.
How far ahead do you allow yourself to plan? Do you have 3-year, 5-year goals, or what is the next phase of MSc?
Yeah, I think a couple. I do goal set. I think what I probably did a couple of years ago was focus a little bit more on processes rather than outcomes. I was inspired by the great book, The Score Takes Care of Itself, Bill Walsh, and it's all about planning, planning, organisation, processes, and the outcomes will take care of themselves because you're doing the day-to-day thing. So I put a lot more sort of emphasis on that side of things, making sure my processes were good, making sure my diary management was good, etc., etc. That being said, I think it's good to get your head above the water sometimes and actually just have a vision of where you're heading to. So I think that's important. So yeah, I've got some rough ideas. It's probably actually something I need to. In fact, I was only talking to someone about this the other day. I probably need to have a little think about where this is going, because again, you can go too far that way of processes and being in it. I've actually just probably around now just got to get my head above water again and be right, where's this where's this going? Because at the moment we've just got we've got certain ambitions with growth and things like that, but we're probably talking 1 year, 3 to sort of 3-year plans. I wouldn't say there's a massive 5 or 10 year at the moment. So maybe that's something I need to do to again, just help with that direction. It's good to know where you want to end up. Things change, but I think it's good to have a bit of an idea of obviously what direction you want to go in.
So I don't like the question of are you happy? Happiness to me is it's a very transient, it's like a moment. It's very
Yeah.
fleeting.
It's a feeling. Yeah.
Are you content?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. You always want more, right? You always want more. I'm not very good at being present and living in the moment, and I think that comes with my personality and also being a business owner. I think is like you are always living with that certain level of anxiety of future, what's next. And again, I'm not great at the 5 and 10 year plan stuff, but you know, the next month, the next 6 months, the next year, a lot of my sort of mind goes into that. So I'm trying to work a lot on that sort of being present, taking in the moment. We had a gym social on Saturday, as you know, we like to run those, regularly, and so we had a night out, and you get this every time. I get this every time we do a event or every time we have a night out. Everyone's relaxed. We had a couple of beers, and someone said to me like, "You must be so proud of like this and what you've accomplished and stuff." And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. It's a bit sad, that, isn't it? But like, I don't mean that's come across as somber, but like, it's actually taking the time to be like, oh, this is pretty good, actually. This is pretty good, living in the present a bit. And also looking back at the past a bit, because you're always looking at the future as like next, chasing that thing. And it's like, actually sometimes look backwards and just see where you've come from. You see, where were you a year ago? Where were you in that first couple of years where you were in the trenches with me? You saw me at my best and at my worst, probably, and I think it's quite good to just look back and gain a bit of perspective. So I'm trying to like stop looking future. I'm trying to be a bit more present, and I think contentment comes with that. Of like, okay, I've got all these ambitions to push further, but like, you're doing good. You're doing good. Like, and that's something I need to probably just tell myself a little bit more. So to answer your question, like, yes, I'm very proud and happy of where it's got to. I'm content. Just about. And then it's like, what's next? So got to work a bit more on that, like, that present moment. And I like when I actually stop and think, I am content. Things are in a great place. Like, things are in a great place. It's a tough economy out there. We're surviving. A lot of gyms, a lot of businesses haven't survived. We're still going. We've got a great group of people. We're making life-changing results for people, which is so rewarding. And I'm in a position now where I'm not in 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. I've got time. I can say no to things. I can manage, my diary as I want. And like, that's a pretty cool place to be. So yeah, I think I just need to stop and think about that a little bit more and appreciate that I am content.
It's a really good point. And first of all, like, I really appreciate being very honest about what it's actually like, because it's very easy, especially these days with the like social media look of life of only the good bits, the flashy bits, and actually running a business of any size and scale is really difficult, and it's not a linear path. And a lot of people talk about work-life balance, and it doesn't exist to my eyes, because you'll have these like peaks and troughs, and if you have the zoomed out lens, yeah, you can have balance, but at the moment you might need to work continuously for 2 years because that's what is demanded. But I think when you can start detaching from that situation that you're in, do the most important things, get those bits done, then if you've still got spare capacity, then maybe do the busy work. But like you said right at the start, I think it's really important to go through these phases and these steps and learn and iterate and analyze, what are we doing, what are we not doing, where could we be? But it takes that detachment to be able to view that rather than being stuck in the weeds at the time, which is engaging as well, isn't it?
100%, mate. I think that's what I'm saying about that sort of like, what would you go back and tell yourself? It's like, I just don't think there's any shortcuts, mate. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure there's been many like more intelligent people or better business owners than me in the past who've maybe got there a bit quicker, or maybe they've gone straight to it. But I don't think so. I don't think you can go straight through there. You've got to be wearing all the hats. You've got to be doing all the stuff. You've got to work the hours. I don't think there's any shortcut. You got to work hard to begin with, and then you start realizing it's about working a bit smarter and all that sort of stuff. But I do think it's to get anywhere in life. I think what's the old saying? Like, people are only jealous of what you've got now. They're not jealous of how you got, and I'm a very sort of small business owner and a tiny, thing in the grand scheme of things. But like you look at your superstars and the sacrifices they have to. Everyone wants to look like Arnie, but do they really want to go through the training and all that sort of stuff? And I think like to be successful in any form of life, to be that doctor, you've got to study. You can't. There's no shortcuts. You've got to graft. You've got to do those like that extremely hard studying and examinations, and to be the best athlete. You see the highlights, right? You don't see the training. You don't see the gym sessions. You don't see the practice after hours, all that kind of stuff. And I just don't think there's any shortcuts to one. If you want to be successful at anything in life, I think you have to go through that kind of bit of turmoil. I think it's okay. I think it's okay to go through. I think it's necessary to go through the tough times to get to where you want to.
What you also do when you're looking at the like finished product, let's take an athlete for example, you're seeing them right at the pinnacle, and you're trying to emulate getting to that point, but you're missing all the bits in the middle, aren't you? Take your business. You're looking at someone whose business is 20 years ahead, and you're going, all right, I need to do what they do. No, you don't. Because your business is 2 minutes old. You've got to learn from people that are a couple of steps ahead, not 500 steps ahead. What 100%. Are you doing there? Because you're too far away from me. I need to get to left foot in front of my right foot at the moment.
That's a great point. It's a great point. Yeah, and I think that's where, like, out there in the world of like mentorship and things, I think that's where like good mentors will sort of say like, they might be here and you might be here in your journey, and they're not saying like, okay, we're going to do the Dan Martell replacement ladder stuff. Hang on, this guy actually just needs to put the hours in at the moment. You need to make those phone calls. You need to do those 5 social media posts a week. Let's not worry about this. Let's worry about that and that and that. And everyone's just different pace of journey and on a different stage of their journey. Yeah, and you can often see these guys and think, that's what I need to be doing. But what have they done to get to that level is quite interesting. And are you willing to put yourself through that? And if you're not, that's okay, as long as you're content and happy in your own life. But if you want to go and try and be the best in your field at this or achieve that, you have to. I don't think there's any shortcuts really.
Yeah, it's a fascinating psychological journey to go on and constantly iterate and perform and develop. And circling back to the kind of S&C and what you've noticed over the last 20 years in the industry, how has your philosophy of training changed and adapted, and what's the kind of journey that someone coming through the doors at MSc will kind of go through?
Yeah, I think from like from a training point of view, I think you're always like, evolving your theories. There's new research coming out, but like, there's also nothing new under the sun really. Like in regards to training, there's like different, like, we go through different periods where, Olympic lifting's a bit more popular, and then it's like powerlifting's a bit more popular, and then like, open chain, closed chain, like machine work's a bit more popular. Only single leg work we're going to do. Only, we're only going to get strong at squat, bench, deadlift. Everything else will take care of itself. And you realise, like, as with most things in life, it's probably somewhere in the middle, right? So I think like your core, for me, my core beliefs and core foundations haven't really changed that much. I believe in, moving well, building a good strength base as like your priority. But I believe that, even if your goals are very like strength based, you need to be, conditioning wise fit enough to be able to handle the volumes and, the workloads, and obviously the health benefits of being cardiovascularly fit as well as like strong and all these kind of things. So like the general rules haven't really, changed that much. I think what I've probably developed over the years is just the nuances of coaching, of dealing with individuals. And okay, so I've always believed, and I'll always believe in a squat, in a single leg, in a hinge, in a push and a pull and a carry, right? But how am I dealing with those interpersonal relationships is probably somewhere where I've, progressed, because I think I come from a like very competitive sporting background as a youngster, and then gone into like performance based S&C. And I think looking back, I was probably a bit too much on that, aggressively pushing the numbers, or like, come on, he's got to learn how to do a snatch. Come on, this guy's got to learn how to do a snatch. Whereas I think I've realised now about like the little individual nuances, exercise adaptation, and also how to, I guess you call it like the psychological side of training of like, this person needs that, needs that foot down, that little bit of like, come on, mate, sort it out, come on, like, let's go. Others need that like gentler approach. Some people need the encouragement, and, whatever it is. And also like just a better eye for, I just think that's important. I think like, people are looking, again, you alluded to social media, and I think like, social media is about grabbing attention, right? We're all on it to just grab that bit of attention, to look at us, to look at our product, or to look at our life, or whatever it is. And it's so tempting to, put the clickbait out there and just put some outrageous statement out there, or, someone doing a squat on a Bosu ball on one leg and doing crazy stuff. It's so tempting to do. And you can sort of almost understand why people do it. But, I think the nuts and bolts never really change. And I think like it's, just important to stick to your beliefs, stick to your foundations. I've probably realised over the years that, it is about like squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, but different people, we can, not everyone needs to be back squatting, not everyone needs to be doing a clean, and that's probably somewhere I've developed a little bit, is the nuances. And also I would say, probably the biggest thing actually is just the holistic view of health and S&C. So what we do with our members a lot now is like, and we've been doing this for a long time, but, there's probably a period where it's like, right, coming in for your PT session, great workout, coaching, proud to say it's a high level at MSc. Cool. See you next week. Next one. Blah blah blah. And now very much when we're working with clients, so our process is like, you used to sign up online and then you just be into it, right? Whereas now it's like, right, you're going to sit down, consultation. We're going to find out about you as an individual. We're going to build the schedule around your training goals, your experience, budget potentially, etc. We're going to build that training program for you, because it's easy to teach a squat, deadlift, etc. But it's actually for someone new coming into the gym, or someone looking to get their training, onto that next level. A lot of it is about the, how does the schedule look? How does the program look? How are we in touch with this client throughout the week? So right, okay, you're going to do your one-on-one session on Monday, but you're going to come to this, Metcon on Tuesday. We need you to take Wednesday off. Thursday you're coming in for session 2, and here's the program to do that, with the videos, with the explanations. The Friday is going to be a bit of a lower day, where it's like aerobic and mobility work, etc. So I think that's probably, one thing we've really looked at is the holistic view of looking at like managing someone's health and fitness. You're not just coming in for the session. It's like we're managing your week to week. And I think that's like an important direction the industry needs to go down, to be honest. We work with a lot of busy professionals. How can we, and a big thing we do now is check-ins. We're in touch all the time. How's your first week been? How's your first month been? Is there anything we can do to help? Let's book you in for a 15-minute sit down at the end of month 1. How have you found it? What's your biggest win? Because we need to get people into training being a habit, not a motivation. You know yourself, on a Monday, you brush your teeth, go to the gym. Like, it's the same thing. Like, you don't think about brushing your teeth. You just brush your teeth because you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth. It's a Monday. I go to the gym. Like, it's just what I do. I don't need the motivation. It doesn't matter how I feel. And I think if we can help build, not only give the good sessions to people, but if we can help build the structure, and we can coach accountability. We can't motivate you to get out of bed. You have got to meet us halfway. But if we can coach accountability alongside giving you a great session, like, Dave, how's this week gone? On this session 3, I only came twice, blah, blah, blah. Mate, Dave, don't worry about it. You come and done your 2 sessions. You know, like a month ago, you weren't even training. Now you're disappointed you've done 2 sessions. Don't worry about that third one, mate. We're going to hit that next week. This is the goal. And I think that's a huge thing. And the data in the industry will tell you if people, you know, it take about 3 months to build the habit. So we focus a lot on the 90-day journey. You know, what can we give as much support and structure as we possibly can outside the gym, inside the gym, to get that person into the routine, and then you'll normally find they're into that routine there, which is great from a business point of view, obviously, as well. But obviously the most important thing, that person's like, you know, they're someone who trains. It's just part of their life now to do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or that Tuesday, Thursday, whatever it is.
I'm a massive fan of systems thinking, and like you touched on there, like motivation will get you started, but it's not what sustains you. It's like putting your car into first gear, gets you off the line, but actually having that system in place is what removes the emotion from it. You're not like, oh, do I feel like trading today? Doesn't matter. You just execute the plan. Like, the system is you train on this day, this day, and this day. Have you noticed, as you've gone along, the accountability bit? That's the bit I want to touch on. And when people don't have a system into place, or they have a setback, if they don't have accountability or they don't have a system, if they reach that setback of, you know, there was traffic today, so I can't train today, I think then it's more easy for people to drop off and you'll never see them again. Whereas if you have a system or you have some accountability, okay, yeah, we lost Monday, but oh well, you got Tuesday, you got Wednesday, do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Mate, the more of, you know, I mean, you asked me about like what's changed, and I just think that accountability side is just huge for people. And you're right, the motivation will get them started, and we can't drag them to the front door. Like, they've got to do that themselves. But if we can help with that accountability, you know, again, it's that kind of like diary management, isn't it? Of like, that guy's, you know, missed the Friday. Don't worry about it. It's cool. Like, it's okay. We're going to hit it. You know, we're going to hit the session tomorrow, or we're just going to hit next week. You're going to hit your 3 sessions next week. That's progress. Well done. We're pushing. We're building the habits. And I think like just having a support network is huge. And, you know, I mean, as in our adult lives, whoever gets encouraged by someone, like, just to hear like, hey, you're doing good, like, you're doing great, well done. You've just completed your first month at MSC, like, you've never trained before, or you were training before and you've fallen off the bandwagon, you haven't trained for 2 years, and you've just done, you know, 9 sessions in your first month. That's a huge achievement. Well done, mate. Well done. Let's get, you know, right. What's next? What's next? Let's build that habit. And, you know, also it's good. You know, it's just important to have things booked in, right? It's having that structure that, you know, we've all done it before, where it's like, oh, you know, New Year's resolutions. Right, I'm going to achieve this. Unless you've got the structure and the accountability in place, you know, it's gonna fade away. How are you gonna create that habit? You know, one for me this year was like, right, I'm going to take creatine every day this year, because I've always been like terrible at just forgetting and all this. So it's like, right, the process I'm going to use is, first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, glass of water, creatine, bang, before I do anything. Right, done. And then Luke's got a similar goal, so we're kind of keeping each other accountable with that. And I do think it's the same. You know, you're working with busy professionals, everything like that, and there's so many distractions. We've got the work, busy jobs, family lives, etc., etc. Right? Can we help you structure a little routine that is 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, and you're going to book in on our system, and you're going to come in at, you know, 8 a.m. on a Monday, and that's your hour. I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to see how that went. What can we change? How did you find it? Give me some feedback. And again, going back to your earlier question, like, I think that's where we've changed a lot, is like, you know, we need to keep people on the straight and narrow. We need to give them that structure, that framework in which they can build can build that routine and build some positive habits.
It's great that you do that. Like, I would term it as that like full wraparound care. I think it's something that is very missed, that like personalization thing and making people feel like super valued, like you touched on earlier. You've got ChatGPT now, you've got AI systems that will build you a program. Yeah, they can build you a program, but there's no human there, there's no connection there, there's no that accountability, and that's what people need. We need that human connection.
You hit the nail on the head there, mate. I think like that's, someone was only asking me the other day, do you think people will just start getting programs off ChatGPT and all this sort of stuff? And it's like, yeah, some people will, but like there's no substitute for that human connection. And I think like, and again, it's the nuances of training. So if we're talking about like, coaching is so much more, and that's probably one thing I've learned over the years. Coaching is so much more than, 15 years ago, I could probably teach you the perfect squat, but could I actually coach the nuances of like, the adaptations of the programs, the RPEs, when to push, when to back off, how to deal with that person on an emotional level week to week, how to sort that person's diary, the training diary, etc., etc. I think like that's hugely important. It's a massive a massive part of it. So yeah.
Mark, I want to be respectful of your time. I've been here for plenty long enough. I want to thank you for being really honest, talking us through that journey, talking to us about your journey from that passion into business, and how it didn't sound like it was ever part of the plan, but it has become that plan, and your identity has kind of shifted along with it. And just on a personal level, it's been an honour to know you and be your friend along the journey. So thank you very much. And before we close, is there anything else that we've missed? Anything else we need to discuss?
I don't think so, mate. I mean, I'd just like to throw that back at you as well and just say, thanks on a personal level. I mean, you were there in that first couple of years, mate, and with I think you were probably one person who dragged me out of the gym for 10 minutes to go and have a coffee and actually like just help me decompress and unload all my problems onto you. And you were a great friend during that period. I love what you're doing with Kaizen, and I think it's massive, mate. And, wish you and your team all the best moving forward. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, mate. We do nothing on our own. No one ever. You didn't teach yourself to tie your own shoelaces. Someone taught you. We gather people along the way, and it's been an honour being on your journey with you, my friend. So thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers, Mark.
Cheers.